Forefront's going to be quickish, and we'll have most of that content happen within the committee report outs and the executive session tonight. And yeah, just that we will have an executive session tonight would be the second update. So that's there. Jim, if you're ready, I can begin with our mission moment.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, cool. So we did a little bit of this during Thursday's SLC meeting, but I think it's appropriate for the full board. Um, it's April. There are a couple of milestones to report out with regard to the class of 2024, and their accomplishments and their families' accomplishments. And so first is that 100% of our class of 2024 did submit an application to college for the fall, which is great. I think I reported that out a couple of months ago. In addition, 100% of our students in that class have been accepted to at least one college for the fall, which is great. And I want to provide you with an acceptance list today and talk about some of the observations of note with regard to the suite of colleges that kids are now weighing and deciding on. So I think first, and the list I'll show you in a moment. And the picture on the right is of a recent college fair we did here at the high school. We do that annually, and so I think there's a 10th grader with her mom and dad asking about experiences at one of the colleges represented. So I guess this call feeds into kind of what you're seeing here with some of the outcomes and what kids are now thinking about with regard to their options. So there were some first time acceptances to several colleges, including Barnard, Union, the CIA. If anyone's been to Poughkeepsie and has had dinner there, it's a great spot. But it's the first time in which we've had students apply and get into a culinary arts post-secondary option. Boston College also in the mix, Bryant College, RIT, Clarkson, way up in Potsdam, I believe, and Syracuse. So some first-time colleges with this fifth cohort of kids graduating from our school. As we've had in the past, there are a number of CUNYs and SUNYs that are heavily represented. There are also a number of HBCUs represented, including Morehouse and Clark Atlanta and Shaw. And then I think what's now beginning to unfold, and I think it's great for our kids and for our school and community, is that we do have a number of alumni support groups represented at a number of colleges. I'm thinking of Temple, SUNY Oneonta, St. Francis, Stony Brook, et cetera. And so I think that just provides the right level of support for kids as they perhaps are on campus for the first time and maybe the first in their family attending college for the first time. And so I think it's a huge support. Here's the list in really small font. I mentioned some of the noteworthy observations. If you take a quick look, you'll see other colleges represented here. Trudy, if you're on now, SUNY Cortland is in the mix. Sudi's son is now in his second year there. And so I think, what I'll say here is this is formed and evolved and morphed over the past 5 years. And I think it's kind of a work in progress as we think about, making sure that all of our kids have all doors open to them as they graduate from our school and move on to college. So I think this is a pretty solid list. And as we sort of think about which schools best serve our kids and the ways in which we only improve our services to kids, I think this list also begins to evolve. And so I'm excited to sort of see that happen and share it with you each and every year. And then finally, quick photo. So a few kids got to visit SUNY Stony Brook this past week. It's an option for, I think, 2 or 3 of our students, and they were hosted by a number of our alumni. And so this is a group of Unity current seniors and former seniors on campus checking out the facilities and supporting one another. So all good things in the world with the mission moment tonight as we think about 6 through 12 and then beyond. So there you go. We are now moving on to the next agenda item, 141-ish days into the school year. And so we're moving fast and getting now to what is the tail end of the year. And so this is a very busy time. I'll talk through some of the things that are happening or that have happened over the course of the past 30 days. So, and this is a compilation of some of the headlines that were shared out during various committee meetings last week. So I've highlighted the headlines in my mind that I think are deserving of the full committee or things that are brand new and noteworthy. So Let's begin. So I would just say that with enrollment right now, we're at 551, and what's noteworthy there is that it's very steady and it's been steady the past few months. I think this is probably the steadiest it's been in a number of years, and as strong as it's been in a number of years. And so that feels really good as we're fully utilizing all of the seats that we have in our school to educate kids. Secondly, and I think this is a bit of a stretch for us or has been a challenge, we do have some vacancies at both sites and we're covering them all internally at this point in time, which has just created kind of like a stretch and people having to work really hard and having it perhaps not be something that they are able to do for a full year, but are now doing what's best for kids and chipping in. So we've got two vacancies in math. We're covering those internally. We recently created a vacancy in history and in science. There was a long-term leave for a while that is now a vacancy. And again, we're covering those internally. Many of our chairs or our senior people are kind of covering for those positions. So kids are in really good hands, but it just stretches folks thin. The high school, there are two positions, a learning specialist position in the humanities and a science teaching position, which is also a long-term leave that was turned into a full vacancy. And both of those positions are being covered internally at this point in time. So I would say that's a challenge point as we think about headlines and where we are at day 141. Michelle's going to talk, I mean, Melissa's going to talk about state exams at the middle school and kind of where we think we are with ELA. The exam took place last week and math happening next month. So Melissa will share out some thoughts there. And then she will also share out some thoughts on our third round of interim assessments at our high school. So we'll get there with the SLC report out momentarily. I've talked about college and career readiness and some of those highlights here. I would also say that we did, for the first time in a few years, we brought them back, administered and hosted PSATs and SATs at our school last Friday. And the attendance was solid. With 92% of our 10th graders here, 96% of our 11th graders here taking those exams. And so that's high attendance in comparison to like a day typically at our school. And so kids were here and eager to show off their best stuff. So a win there, and we're happy to kind of bring that back. Also, just a note with family engagement, I think you've seen most of these highlights here, but we did have conferences also at the high school last week, and strong attendance there with 82% of our families here present and participating. So all good things there too. Beyond that, looking at student recruitment, we had our lottery on April 1st. That's a big event for us. I'll share out some of the highlights there data-wise in a moment. And then we had two admissions receptions held at both campuses at the school. And so both of those went over well. And what was cool is we had students taking part and volunteering their time to host our new families. Give me one moment. Okay, and let's see. I should have highlighted this, but number 10, just summer prep. With us being now in April, we're thinking about the summertime. Two updates here. First, there's a bit of a challenge in that we have both buildings potentially being renovated or worked on this summer, which means we may have to find outside spaces for our summer academies. And so those would, you got them? Okay. Have a good night. And so Lenny was good to offer some ideas last week during a conversation. Juliana's been kind of active in maybe thinking through ideas. And so we do have some help there, but that is something we're trying to find a solution to. And so that's in the mix. And then one other update, we did receive the Summer Boost Grant, which we've received the past few years. That's for 125,000, and that's for summer school for the middle school. So that's a good amount of funding to really bring everything to our kids this summer that we want. So we're pleased about that. A lot of yellow here and thinking about the next group of headlines. First, with just readiness. This is a busy time for us, maybe the busiest week I've had since the year began as we both work through performance reviews being in process, hiring happening, and also kind of being sluggish with regard to being able to kind of interview actively as we also manage exams and exam prep and just doing our best on the daily. And so I think these are areas of focus for us right now. Budget's being prepared. We'll talk about that during the AFC meeting and then staff agreements for the coming year. So a whole lot around planning and readiness and human capital. Definitely a busy time. Development wise, a lot of action here. I think some progress being made. I think there's probably more we're doing as a school and an organization than we ever done in this area. So a few things to highlight. We did submit a grant application to the New Schools Venture Fund to support alumni success and our college and career readiness program. So we'll hear about that at some point in time, but we submitted an app. I told you about Summer Boost already. I've been in the mix with one of our co-founders, Eric Gonzalez, in preparing letters of interest and inquiry to three separate private foundations, the Tiger Foundation, Petrie, and Pinkerton Foundations. And so this is not something that we've done before. And so this is a new path, but I think a promising one. So that's happening. And we're awaiting two local grants coming from the Brooklyn Borough President's Office and our local council member. And then finally, we've built out this advisory council group, and we have 15 members right now. And I've been in communication with them, and some really good ideas have come out of a very fledgling new program with lots of promise. And I imagine it continuing to grow over the coming months. So some good things there. I'll stop there. Any questions thus far as I just kind of fill you in with what's been happening? Cool. Finally, facilities. I've mentioned this, both buildings being renovated, and so that's just time. And want to thank Jim and Sal for their continued support on the high school expansion front. The middle school expansion is not small. It's a 2 or 3 year, maybe 4 year effort, and it will have some impact on our programming. And so we're trying to work around that right now. So um, those are ongoing and front and center. I'll pause there. I think we'll talk about school finance when we get to the AFC share out. And so those are the headlines. That's what's been happening over the course of the last month. So before I hand it off for committee share outs, I'll give you a quick sense of a review of the data dashboard. I think we've done most of the updating already. There's nothing to deep dive on today. There are three areas within this very small table that I will highlight or just take note of. One is that we didn't talk about pass rates yet, but we are obviously monitoring that on a monthly basis. And I just say there's not much action with regard to change going on. We've got our eyes on seventh and eighth grade ELA. And that's been something we've been focusing on over the course of the past few months. So not a lot of backward change or forward change. They're pretty stagnant, and so we continue to monitor it. And I think at the high school, some of our younger grades, ninth grade ELA, is a red flag right now with regard to kids showing and demonstrating proficiency in that class, and so heavy supports there. And so that's sort of what's on our eye and what's the focus with regard to pass rates in the third quarter, fourth quarter of the school year. Beyond that, attendance wise, you'll see that's in pink now. It's in pink because it's rather mixed. 93% attendance on the daily average wise at the middle school, 89% at the high school. That's a 1 point uptick since the last time that was reported out. As you recall, I just reported out where we were attendance-wise with SAT and PSAT at the high school last Friday. So it's good to kind of get a sense of what's possible and where we are now on the daily. And then finally, suspension-wise, not a lot of movement since the last time I reported this out, which I think was last month. We are overall at let's see, just under 8% across the board for the year with regard to unique suspensions over the year. So that's a complete rundown of where things are status-wise and event-wise at the school over the past month. As I mentioned with strategic planning, we'll talk a bit about building-related stuff during the executive session and where things stand now. We'll also do some of that during the report out. And I just would shout out the before and after. This is what we're looking for as a school in the short term. And so that's the goal and effort. And there have been a couple of new renderings coming from the architects with regard to how we use a new multi-purpose space, both as a dining hall and as a multi-purpose space here, Nance. So a couple of um, images to show you to get you fired up. And I think with that, we move into committee report outs. And so Jim, I'll hand it off to you. But you're me. And here's Trudy.
Sorry, there we go.
Yep.
I've gotta learn to unmute myself. Student
Hmm.
attendance.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
I mean, I've read a number of articles on this, and it's
Yeah.
horrible across, this actually looks quite good compared to other people. What's the current thinking on how to fix this? Other school, I saw something nationwide, it's like under 80% or something like that. It's crazy. Um,
Yeah, last month I kind of shared something out too around attendance and how schools are handling it. And um, there were some reasons in that article that were posed out about like maybe there's a different just approach back home on like coming to school in the way that looks and
right.
we'll tackle that. And so I think there's some realness to that. That's not the only thing. Um, but for us, we've got really strong attendance at the middle school overall when you look at just like averages. We do have more students, a larger percentage of students who are chronically absent than what we had pre-pandemic. And so it's about 25% of our kids that have attendance below 90%, maybe closer to 30%. That's high, and it's worse at the high school. Um, and so we've tried a number of initiatives at the high school because that's where our focus is, particularly around like the translation or connection between attendance, completing your schoolwork, and then earning passing grades in your classes, where they mean graduation or not. And I know we've got some heavy sort of interventions happening at the advisory level. Our senior director of academic counseling is kind of captaining much of those efforts. And there's a whole lot of correspondence with families and kids and advisors on a weekly basis. And then I think, we're lucky to have two social workers full time at the high school to certainly intervene with families when there's serious chronic absenteeism in play. So I mean that's what we're doing right now. I think there's a need to kind of step back this spring and summer and thinking about next year and how we might go about this in an even smarter way and look at other best practices out there. But it's been an ongoing challenge this year. And as you said, we're not the only ones kind of facing this challenge, but it doesn't mean we don't want to address it and resolve it. Melissa, is there anything you'd add to the mix?
Yeah, I would double click one thing, clarify one thing. We have put in so I think our underlying belief is that if kids have someone who cares about them, who checks in with them coming to school, who checks in with their families, who notices, students are more likely to come. So we shook up our advisory structure this year. We made that a key element. There's a lot of outreach and there's a lot of noticing. Kid won't go days without a call from their advisor, um, and like regular parent outreach there. In addition, the kind of stick of 75% attendance minimum in courses, which we have to see how we can whether there is like an opportunity for students to sort of like appeal that if they've mastered things, so that we can maintain our courses. But and then thinking about like other ways, like Josh said, other things that are working. What are those carrots as well, that are working to get kids in school and excited about school? And then from an instructional perspective, like what are the shifts that are happening in our current moment, that help us to think about school a little bit differently and make it a place kids want to come to. So those are the things we're doing and the things we're thinking about.
At the high school level, do the parents know, or when you call them, are they saying, I didn't know?
No, they know. They get
Okay.
daily notifications. There's automated messaging sent if a child isn't in school. Sometimes I think the biggest gap in one of the things we're solving for now is that I think you said our attendance rate is probably better than what you're hearing happens in many places throughout the country. But some of that reflects daily attendance. We also have students arriving late. So sometimes those don't get flagged for parents in quite the same way, and us thinking about messaging that like not only coming to school but coming to all of it is a big thing we're digging into now. So, but parents do know it is automated, which makes it simple. And then that more personal, like I'm calling you as someone who cares about your child, conversations happen with regularity as well, on top of the automated thing. So frequently when we finally get in touch with parents, they're like, I know I got the email, I got the text, I know they weren't there. And I need help too. And that's where the services Josh talked about, having two social workers on site, and someone who can maybe dig into the root of why kids aren't coming, it might get enacted.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Okay. Should we jump to SLC?
Yeah, yeah, sure thing. And I think with that, what you'll see in the screen now is in green what's been covered or will be covered right now. And so Melissa's going to spend some time sharing out our discussion from Thursday's SLC around middle school exam prep and forecasting. And then she'll transition to IAs at the high school and results and action planning moving forward.
Right. When we last all met together, I presented our middle school IA data, our mock exam data.
For some reason, you're muted, Melissa.
Oh my, how long have I been muted?
It was about 4 seconds. So
Oh wow. Okay. When we last all met, we were looking at this data right here. This is our middle school IA2 ELA data, our mock data. We looked at that alongside some of our earlier data and our STAR data. And what we said was that results were mixed, but didn't show that we were strongly on track at any grade level. For math, we saw something somewhat similar, results mixed, not strongly on track at every grade level, and seemingly off track at the sixth grade level. Since then, we've enacted this plan that we have right here, data-driven planning, DDPs created by teachers and put into place in classes, a cycle of regular weekly assessments, and we're going to look at that in a second to help us forecast how we might be on track. We have infused the school with joy. We have turned it into a superhero paradise. Kids get shouted out for their work each week. There is a pep rally tomorrow and a spirit week. Today was like superhero close day. I had nothing to offer, as well as some deep small group instruction reactively to the data, looking at kids' trends and what they needed, and having data responses in smaller groups or in stations throughout the cycle. We have completed ELA testing at the high school. The makeup exams finished this afternoon, and we have closed that book. Math is about 9 instructional days away. So here is where we think we ended up. After this weekly quiz cycle, looking at how we've done, we think that we are on track in ELA 8, in math 6th, 7th, and 8th. 8th grade math looks a little bit funky, but the way the state is going to gauge that this year is looking at both algebra and at our 8th grade math. So students will just take one, and we know that students are strongly on track in algebra, even though we're starting that test prep season now. These are the weekly quiz averages, so we're feeling that these are the most current, most predictive information we have about how kids will do. This is looking at how accurately students answered questions, and on average, how many of them were scoring proficiently. What is not shown here or quantifiable in a really clear way is just what happened during our ELA testing. I got to go into all of our testing rooms, and I got to proctor in our 6th grade. And if it is an indicator of how students will do based on how they interacted with this test, how they annotated questions, how they planned out essays, how students taking tests in the computer filled up multiple sheets of blank paper full of notes, then I would say we're going to test among the strongest schools in the city. Students, we called for buses to come at 1 p.m. and we were holding buses because students were still testing on these untimed tests. I'm incredibly proud of the school and the students, and they really left it all on the page. If we're seeing that we're not pushing for, if we're not achieving these results here on the ELA exam, then we know that the underlying issue is a really literacy base and we need to double down on that strategy. But an incredibly strong showing from a skills perspective, a test taking skills perspective from our middle school this time. And I am excited to say the same, hopefully when we meet with the math exam that's coming up on the 8th and 9th. 9th and
10th. Thank you. Melissa. Before we move to high school, are there any questions, observations here worth noting? And Juliana, Jeanette, if you see something that is worthy of note that we didn't address, please feel free to underline those things. All right, so that's where we are with ELA as of last week, and then math, the next focus area happening in just a few weeks. Let's move on to high school and IA3 results, which are now a couple of weeks old. Go ahead.
Yep. Not too many weeks old. About 2 weeks ago, we took our mock exams at the high school. These were fully released regents or APs created by either the state of New York or by the College Board that has the wonderful a reality of giving us anchor papers and all of the goodies that come with looking at the true tests that kids will take. What that does mean is that you're going to see in each of these sets of results a June exam given in March. So you can reasonably expect there's a portion of this exam that students haven't learned. They're told to use all their strategies on that, give it a go. So we're going to look at how students did, but also how many of them were close to passing. You can reasonably expect the students who are in the close to passing bucket, if they're just learning the rest of the untaught content so far, will be in fairly good stead, if not at a college ready level. So looking at that, knowing that still, forecasting, we think that we are on track in ELA 2, Global History 2, and US History. But we think we are off track in all of our Regents STEM classes right now and need to intervene in those. I'll do a mini dive on just the 4 most important. This is ELA here. Last year, the state of New York had a 77% of students scored proficient. Unity had just 44. So we are really going after that 77 bucket. We had set it at 70% in the past because that was more typical for what we were seeing. On this exam, which was a released exam, we had 49% of students score proficient. So if all of them sat on this exam, then we would have beat ourselves from last year. So that is good news there. The looking at that below basic bucket as well, we reasonably expect those students to move into proficiency. With ELA, this is an iterative exam. They're not learning new stuff, but they will have a lot more practice on the essays, on the timing of the essays, and the attempts there. So we think that we are likely on track to meet that goal of 70% that we'd set for ourselves, and ideally exceed that 77%. This number that we're looking at here, the actual donut chart, includes also students who've taken the exam multiple times. They're not in the class that tends to end in this exam and been unsuccessful. So it is a more realistic look at who will sit for this exam than some of the tests we've taken before. And that's where we are here. Juliana, Jeanette, anything you would add to this?
No, I think you covered it.
The one other thing I would say is, while we're feeling a little bit more confident in the overall pass rates, I think we may not hit our college ready pass rates this year, which is scoring a 75% or higher. Cool. We'll also look at global. I'll do this one quickly. Last year, the state scored 74% to our 67%, so we were a good deal closer. Our pass rate goal had previously been set at 65% because this is how students tended to perform on this exam, so we'd like to shoot a little bit higher. While the donut on the right makes it look like we are not truly on track, This does not include students who take our AP exams, who tend to outperform the students in this group and cohort. In fact, this end of the year exam that included about 18% of content that students had never seen before. We had 11 students who scored far below basic or basic, whereas last year on the actual exam, 25 students scored below a 65. So we actually think we're on track to outpace ourselves from last year with similar size classes. Anything to add here, Juliana or Jeanette?
No.
Not on my end.
Cool. Taking a little bit more of our brain space, energy, and time are two areas we see that are in need of more support. This is our Algebra 1 score. This year, we're working with a new teacher to this content, a new curriculum, and it will be a new test. So this is a little bit of educated guessing here. On this exam, we only had 16% of students master the content, but we had a number of students in that below basic bucket. That seems like they'll be on track. We also, based on the pacing of this exam and sort of some reteaching that's happened based on the needs of the students, there's about 40% that has not been taught. So we're cutting some of our curriculum as written to speed through some of the most important new material to make sure we're on track here. So last year we had 59%, but only trailed the city by 6%. They had 65% pass rate. So we do think we're a little bit behind, but we have some strong planning here. My guess here is if students took this in 2 weeks, we'd see about a 50% pass rate. So a little bit behind where we were last year, though I do think we're going to accelerate quite a bit based on the planning we've done. And ideally, we'll have a forgiving in its first year cut score for this exam too. Anything, Juliana, Jeanette, or questions from team?
I just have one question, which is, I'm not as close to those numbers as others, but it seems that what we're seeing is it's sort of maybe trending a little bit better than last year, but still kind of far short of what we would want. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's my best guess. Not having ever seen the tests that kids will take before, is that like we're trending a little bit better if indeed our action planning is working, but it's not going to be that 80% that I'd really love to see. I think we might get closer to that state average of 65%. Okay. And then also the college ready goal, 10% is a bit low. I really would love to send more students on with that higher level of proficiency. And I don't think we're going to hit it. I think that's going to be our 2025 push in this course.
And do you feel like you have a good grasp on what's working, what's not working, or is that an unfair question at this point of the year?
I think it's both and. We both have a good grasp on what's working and what's not working after trying this curriculum. Like the level of questioning and the depth of understanding that students are engaging in is great, but there are some things we should have cut. And then we need to do a better job of forecasting using information we have. We have STAR or iReady or other state test information we have from students to identify in advance what some of the foundational gaps are and to put that into the core of our learning. So some of our work this summer and this year will be anticipating some of that and looking at like where we're adjusting our curriculum to make sure that that is addressed so that we're not slowing down to the degree we did to do that now. So that like it is embedded in the right times and that we're thinking that through. And then also some of the strong moves and things we know to do around like deepening learning so that we're seeing that proficient and advanced bucket improve across time. We'll also next year have seen this test and what those shifts are, which is important because it is the first in a series of these exams that shift towards that next generation standard. So it'll give us some practice in making this shift happen across 6 more tests.
Okay, thanks a lot.
And another test that I won't be sad to not see again is our living environment test, which we will retire after this year. This is the one that's toughest for us right now and is a real challenge for our leadership team. Last year, the state of New York had an all-time low of 66%, I think among an all-time low, certainly in the several years I've been looking at them, pass rate on this exam, which tends to be strongly performed by students. Our pass rate goal is set at 80% because that tends to be where we performed in the past. Unity scored 22% last year. So this has been a focus. We have altered curriculum and put some focus on this class this year, but we also lost a teacher within the content. The coach is teaching 3 tested subjects now and hasn't had the same degree of oversight here that we may have had in the past. So right now we're seeing 14.8% mastery. We have another 21% of students within reach there. So I do believe that if we just finish the 20% of content and change nothing with our instruction, we will surpass how we did last year, but that's not enough. We need to bolster this pass rate by a great deal, especially given some shifts that we are making in this content. So this will be a major focus for myself. For our AP, more than our department chair. Our department chair is going to sort of maintain with our earth science class, which is still critical for many kids, and AP bio and chemistry, which she also teaches, while Morsal, our AP of STEM, leans in more to this class, alongside myself and Grace. Questions on this course?
I mentioned this on Thursday, but I think it's worth naming for the full board too. So just from a consequence perspective here, all of our students, in order to graduate and earn a diploma, need to have a certain number of Regents courses and exams they've passed. In the past couple of years, we've had waivers due to COVID and the impact of that. That goes away now, and so students must pass one science exam in order to have the credits they need to graduate. And so 22% doesn't get it done. And so if we were to see that, which we won't, but this is still far below what we want to see. We were in the 70s and even maybe low 80s 4 years ago. Then we would have an uphill fight with regard to getting kids the credits they need in science, regions wise, so that they graduate. So this needs to be corrected.
And then for the students who do not pass, they'll likely take another section of bio, a retake of this class, or a different version of this class. It'll be biology, not living environment, which means that from a trajectory standpoint, they can't take another class that might get them more ready for scientific studies and post-secondary. That's our focus here. Specifically, oh, I forgot about, sorry. I also have some AP forecasts. We're focusing on regions right now because they are a critical need. But I have here our proficiencies last year. Our goals were set this year around both students getting a score that would get them college credit in many schools, as well as having a 2 or above, which really is a prediction point for success in college. Students are more likely to persist in college if they've taken and passed or taken and received a 2 or above in an AP. So there are a couple, with the exception of AP Lit, which was our strongest course last year. On this exam, which was a practice test released by the College Board, we exceeded last year's scores as scored by our own teachers in all except that one course, AP Lit. But AP Lit is very close to how we achieved last year. They've got some time. And then when we look at that 2 or above, it is our second strongest performing course. AP Bio is another one where we're seeing a lot of success this year. That has returned to being taught by our department chair, who had the most success with that course when she piloted it in 2020. It was a very different exam year. And we've got a group of kids who are very interested in the subject matter too. So that's exciting to see. Other courses, though, we have not, I cannot strongly say that we are on track to meet those goals, even if we are on track to beat ourselves last year.
One just clarification. So 100% of the kids have been admitted somewhere. How does all this stuff, if they don't meet how does that relate to going to college?
It's an
They
awesome
have to
question.
take the class again. Yeah. So this it relates highly to going to college and what colleges you get in based on what you choose to do, but your scores as a senior don't affect your admission at all. So colleges are really looking to see if you are taking the hardest course that is offered. So it has, when you look at those admissions numbers, this is part of it. Though if I take AP Calc and a college says, great, that's a student who's mathematically ready. They're taking AP Calc in high school and they're excited to take that level of coursework. They're probably ready for college. And then I get a 1, there's no consequence, but I'm going to have to take that course again in college. The benefit of doing well on this course is now I could enter as perhaps a sophomore and save a ton of money, or perhaps like be able to have a more interesting trajectory at school. But it won't hurt, especially your seniors. And we don't have to release the scores to colleges either if kids don't want to.
And then, but in terms of graduate, they have to graduate for the college to accept them, right?
Yes. So you do not have to pass this this test to pass this class. You can still pass your coursework and not pass the test. In fact, most kids throughout the country do not pass many of them and still get the credit for the AP course.
Okay, but in terms of the prior slides, looks like there's some challenges getting people to pass the Regents portion, and you have to pass a number of those. That's
those
the
are
issue.
exit
They
examinations.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
These exams get you something, if you get the scores and send them off to your colleges. They benefit children. The other scores, they don't really get you anything except they get you graduated. So those are considered exit examinations, and you have to pass the class. So there's double there. And we have a reality where many students pass the class but not the test. The class is not timed the way the test is, and our students are now coming from middle school having taken untimed tests. So that is a reality.
Jim, I love the point you're making, though, right? And so, I mean, I mentioned earlier with the college acceptances list, it's a work in progress, right? And so we've got a number of colleges represented. We're proud of that. And as we improve our capacities internally to have students then demonstrating higher levels of proficiency on these AP exams, more doors are open, more selective colleges are options for them. Same thing with those college ready scores on the Regents exams. Well, right now, like 10% of our students scoring above a 75 or 80 in Algebra 1, that is not acceptable for us in the long term. And so it's great for kids to be showing that they know more than the minute of Algebra 1, for example. So, I mean, that's the work. Coincident. I mean, so on a related point, our data analyst did some analyses on correlations recently, looking at some basic inputs that should have some sort of impact on persistence in college, grades, a few other things. I'll let you guys maybe guess at what the most highly correlated variable was to college persistence.
Attendance.
You nailed it, Mario. Attendance. It was straight up just like showing up and being there, like showing up every day. So anyway, that's important.
And Josh, there's a good point there, which is that like while taking and trying one of these AP courses benefits children, even if they don't get that score. As a school, if we continue to not get the scores as a school, then we gain the reputation of a school that doesn't help kids to get these scores. So we do want, like, as a whole, to be moving towards these very few ones and students scoring though on an individual basis, I would encourage students who could rise to the occasion to take these courses because it benefits them and long term should make them more ready for college.
Quick fun story. I got a text from an alumni parent a week ago with a bunch of pictures of her son in sixth grade at our school, eighth grade at our school, 12th grade at our school, and now he's graduating in a few weeks from Ithaca. And he was a good student, but I don't think he missed a day of school from sixth grade to 12th grade. I mean, just like as persistent and as reliable as they come, and great human being. But like a lot of his success has been just through pushing through. And so one anecdote.
Grit matters. Grit matters.
Yeah. So Melissa, we'll finish up here and talk about some of the things we're doing at the high school to really finish strongly.
Yeah, we're using, some of the same playbook that worked at the middle school. We have teachers engaging in data-driven planning. Chairs are giving feedback on that and supporting folks through that. We are making a shift where generally I work with principals work with APs work with chairs. It's a little dispersed. I am going to support APs directly in planning and delivering the plans for these four very important courses, as well as some individualized planning for students who did not get credits last year. We're doing the same regular assessment cycle. Michelle Roy Gaines is back and we're very excited. She's building me a beautiful tracker for the high school so that we could look at weekly quizzes in the same way we do at the middle school. We are thinking about small group instruction, both within class to the degree that that is realistic at the high school, and then some mandatory after school small group work for students in this season, and thinking about how to really invest families in making sure kids stay, and then cumulative review and preparation. That is terms of art for school. So on the next slide, I have just like what some of that planning of that has looked like for our team, and thinking about how we stop teaching new things, but review the work we've done and dig into all of the practices we have when taking an exam to make sure that we're performing strongly. Lingering questions or pushes?
Thank you, Melissa. And so second report out is coming from the AFC, and in green, you'll see that we report out on March financials. We'll have Kristen do that. We had a conversation about where we are budget wise with the coming year and the work we've done thus far. And I think those are the two big ticket items. We're going to talk a bit about the due from clearing options with regard to FOMB and Unity during the executive session. So I think with that, Kristen, would you like to share out where we are as of March?
Yep.
And what I can do is I'll give you screen sharing privileges.
Should be good.
Should be good. You are good.
Okay. All right. So March, looking at our NICEAD benchmarks for the month end, we are meeting all of our metrics. And we are also meeting our metrics for the bond covenants. A reminder, I say it every month, but I'll remind you, those are not in place for the 23-24 school year, but we're tracking them just to make sure we're tracking in the right way going forward when that is eligible. Our enrollment as of the March invoice is 547 students, which is slightly above where we budgeted. So we've got some positive variance on our general education or regular education. And our special ed is also tracking slightly above our budget. From a balance sheet perspective, no major changes from last month. For profit and loss statements or our income statement as of the end of the month compared to last year, no major swings from year to year. We've kind of had the same story all year. Our lease assistance is just lagging behind due to the time frame of when we submitted for lease assistance due to the bond issuance and needing to get some things in line for that submission. but we are on track to reach our full reimbursement when we get to the end of June. So that'll line up and that gap is narrowing. Our federal grants are behind last year just due to less grant funding being available. No major swings on the expenditure side. I did provide commentary for each of the categories. So if there's further questions on those, I'd be happy to take that. But I'll continue on and we can do kind of questions at the end if there are any. Projecting out for year end, we are looking at a currently almost $400,000 surplus. That's assuming we're able to achieve all of our contribution expectations. If we aren't able to generate any additional contributions to what we have right now, we are still in a positive position with about $84,000. So positive position expected for June 30th. Cash flow, same story that we've had month over month. We are meeting the metric right now, but still projecting to be just shy of that come June. So the AFC will continue to have discussions around options for ensuring that we meet that metric come June 30th. Our cash balance is trending upward over prior years, month by month. So that is a good sign, but still not making up what we need to for June 30th just yet. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Okay.
One thing, sorry. With the lease, the inflation adjustment comes in what, June? Is that it, or July?
The lease assistance reimbursement, is that what you're saying, Jim?
No, our actual lease. There's a bump in the rent.
Yes, it starts July. Yep, each
Do you
July.
need to do anything to ensure that happens on time?
No, we should be good this year because the lease has been executed. And this year the city required a lot of additional documentation that we didn't have in the past. So we had to pull all that together. They were just requiring some additional info. So assuming no other major changes to the application with documentation, we should be good to
Send the
go.
invoice, we're good. Okay, great.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
I think typically I haven't seen the email yet, but I think May is when we start working on that application, May and June. So we should be good for next year.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yep.
We did a bit of a deep dive during the AFC call on revenues for 24-25 as we begin to build out the budget for approval in June. Jim and Marion and Jeanette, should we provide a brief overview where we are now, or should we wait until next month with a fuller draft budget with expenses too?
I'd say wait. I mean, unless somebody feels strongly, I think it's sort of I viewed that as sort of a building block that you gave us, but I'm not sure we need to break it down at this point for the board yet.
Right. Okay. So more to say next month, but I think there's been good progress, and so we forge ahead. Maybe I'll take back screen sharing, Kristen. And here we are. So beyond that, just DFC. I think let's see, a couple of updates with regard to facilities. I think it's worth sharing out for the full board, just to have a sense of where we are and where we've been over the past month. And so there has been good progress. We did secure an owner's rep and MJM to do that work for us over the coming months. With that partnership, there's now been weekly meetings happening with the owner's rep, our architect, engineers, contractors, consultants, et cetera. And so it's felt quite productive. And there's been, as I said, good progress. The drawings have been refined and are getting sharper right now. There is a kind of plan and path for the meeting, the timeline kind of conceived. It's still ambitious with regard to everything happening in such a place such that the building is ready to go by the fall of 2025, but that's what we're aiming for. So that's been the latest. We have another call tomorrow at 9 a.m. If anyone on the general board would like to take part, let me know. But I think Jim and Sal have been on most of those calls, and I appreciate that. So that's the update on the facilities. Sal or Jim, would you add anything?
No.
No, nothing for me. No.
Terrific. Okay. So I think with that, I want to spend a little bit of time next month talking about development strategy work, but nothing to report out to the full board on that today. So I think with that, we move into a report out from the ECPC. We talked about headlines, which you heard already, for kind of ECPC related things. We also then dug into upcoming board events. We're going to bring that to you today. And then I provided an update on where we were with the UAC, and I gave you some headlines earlier on there. So I think here is where we are right now. There have been some changes with regard to events and timing that happens in schools as you find competing commitments, things come up, there's a better date for things, etc. So I was trying to get you stuff way in advance, and so there have been some changes to timing. And so here's where we are right now. We have an art exhibition happening Thursday. In Bed-Stuy at a public site. And so that's happening. We've got college signing day where perhaps there's going to be a change in date. So I won't fully publicize that yet. The same thing with the career fair. There's just a lot of events happening at the high school. So there are a few dates still in the air. But we have solidified an art exhibition happening on the 14th of June. That's an afternoon event. That's also at a local exhibition space. Obviously, we have roundtables solidified, and that's the 18th, 20th, and 21st of June. And for those of you who might be relatively new to this, this is an all-day affair where you sign up for an hour, 2 hours of seeing kids present out what they're proud of over the course of the year, what they've learned. They do so in front of their families. It's facilitated by staff, really powerful series of events over the course of 3 days. And then obviously we've got graduations happening on the 26th and 27th in Bed-Stuy and in Manhattan for the high school. So I think this is our time to say, hey, anything you'd want to sign up for now. I think the goal is that we've got heavy and full board participation during some of these events where you get to interact with kids and our faculty and staff. And so what you'll see here is that Jeanette and Trudy and Sal have a couple of events here that have been listed. I didn't take the liberty of listing others who may have registered for other events where there's been a change of time. So those are listed here too. But if folks are able to sort of say, I want to attend this right now, I'm happy to throw them down on this table. And Trudy and Sal both agreed to chip in with regard to kind of outreach and friendly nudging with regard to these events that are happening. So anything, Sal or Trudy, you'd add?
I'm gonna try to make this Thursday, the art exhibition.
Excellent.
Looks like, is that the one that was supposed to be May 10th? Or there was one on the calendar
That's
for?
the one. Yep. Yep.
I can't remember which one I signed up for, but I thought, I can't
You would
remember.
sign for one of the art exhibitions, and then we have now solidified dates at both events. So
Got
either
it.
one of those, love to host you.
Yeah, this is much better. Thank you. I think that I probably can make the high school college signing day if it's indeed at noon.
Yep. I'll confirm that with you offline.
Hey Josh, you said it's not at the school and there's another location. Do you?
Yeah, I'll get that to you. I'll send you the calendar invite down. It's on Nostrand. And I can send that out to everyone. I just figure, that maybe getting some RSVPs here and then moving forward with a full calendar invite would.
Yeah. Jim,
It's
we gotta
helpful,
get your name
even
on there.
though
And Marion. No pressure, but a little pressure.
Which one's that?
I said we gotta get your name on there.
The signing day. I'm out in June. June, I'm not in the country, so signing day. I just got my calendar open. That might be fun.
Yes.
Ooh, put me down for it with a question mark.
Yep. Cool.
Yeah, I'll have to check. I can't check all the days yet, but
Yep.
I'll get back to you, Josh.
Okay. Excellent. So thank you for that. These are going to be fun, and there's a lot going on. If none of these dates work, no, there are other events happening, obviously. And so the spirit of this is just to connect and feel really good about the impact you're having on school beyond the evenings you share with us. So I think with that, I guess I'll make one more plug for team here. So we've done some good work moving from the concept of an advisory council to now a real deal advisory council. A number of the advisory council members will be at these events that I've just presented to you as well. So that's good. Remember, this is kind of a networking group of young professionals, folks who perhaps could be board members at some point in time, perhaps serve on boards of other entities, but are committed to public education and are intrigued by our school. So there's a bit of a raise here too with having them donate a small amount, but not insignificant amount, and that goes to some of the enrichment things that we're doing at the school. I guess what I'd ask you for is if you've got referrals, if you know of anyone who would be interested in being more active in the life of a school, but perhaps is limited with regard to time and what they can devote. This is a great thing. And so already I've had a number of calls with folks with the expertise you see listed on the right, particularly around higher ed and college counseling and mentoring. And those have been fruitful in just kind of building out some early ideas of things that we hope to see in the school in the near term. So I'm looking to add to this. Right now we've got 15 members. I'd like to have 25 as we move into the spring. And so if you have referrals that you'd like to put forward, please just let me know or email me. I'm thinking Jeanette and Marion of some of the SLC staff early on who are very active in our mentoring program, and this is similar to that. I think it's a little more structured than what we were doing early on. And so this is a great space for being involved.
Hey, Josh, you said if we have any referrals to email you, what's the best way? Just kind of an introduction with
I
the
think-
personal email, or what?
Yeah, I think it's just a, hey, Josh, I've got a couple of people I'd love to share some info with about this. Can you send me what you have? And I'll send you a 1 or 2 pager. And then I think from there, I'll try to be good at my job, which is, hey, just introduce me. I'd love to meet with them and chat with them on the phone. I think, Sal, you were pretty good about that. I think there are 3 members of this council that you referred, and they're terrific. So I'm looking forward to seeing them benefit our school in the same ways that you have. So an email to me, and I'll reach out. I may nudge some folks offline if I know you've got some promising folks in your network who would be intrigued by this. But I think this is not just to ask. I think this is more of this will be good for people. And is a thing that I think benefits those who are really busy during their day jobs and may not be kind of working in education.
Shh.
Was that a volunteer? Marion, you have someone for us?
Yeah. If you're looking for 6-year-olds who don't want to go to bed, I have exactly the perfect person for you. No, I was going to say, if you have like a 1-page slide or something, like some presentation that we could send to our pro bono coordinating group or somebody, we might be able to send that around or to our distribution list or something. But whatever you have that would be a page or 2 would be helpful.
Yeah, be terrific.
The other thing, Josh, you mentioned at one point, kind of having certain time periods at which you wanted to reach out to people, or
I think this is phase 2. This is one
ongoing. What's your thoughts?
I think this spring, I think there's a second round of outreach happening, second half of April through the end of May.
Okay.
So that's what I'd like to see. And I think that then positions us to invite some people to roundtables, which I think is just a very natural, authentic way of inviting people into our school.
Yeah,
So
if you could send that to me too, Josh, that'd be great.
awesome. Thank you. And with that, I think we move into items for approval tonight. And so, Jim, I'll let you take this.
Yeah. So the first item is the minutes from the board meeting. Everybody can turn your video on. That would be terrific. Presumably everybody's had a chance to read them. If there are any questions, please ask now. Okay, seeing no questions. All in favor of approving the minutes from prior meeting? Show of hands. Thank you. Okay, the next item is the architects. Josh, I'm not quite sure
Yeah.
what this one is. So
Yeah, and I'm just gonna, I think this isn't like this isn't a newer item. I think it's just us, I think being as observant of kind of approvals as we possibly can. And so I'm actually going to lean on Kristen a little bit here. Kristen, can you shed some light on exactly what's being approved tonight? We've been using LoSci for some time now. I think we've recently had a partnership with them with the expansion of the building. And I think we've kind of reached some thresholds here where it makes sense to bring this to the full board. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so LoSci is obviously helping with the project, the high school expansion. And we are at a point where we need to breach the 20,000 K mark, which is kind of what is in our financial policies and procedures. This is one of those instances where technically FOMB is paying it, but because it's related to the project, we've kind of taken this approach that because everybody, all entities, FOMB and Unity, are part of the bond proceeds in a way, we're asking both boards to approve the use of LoSci up to a certain dollar threshold. So when we had done our preliminary estimates of the project a couple months ago, I think, Josh, we had about 150,000 in for LoSci. So the request is for the boards to approve up to 150,000. If there's a need to go above that mark, we would come back with a reasoning, a request, and go from there. So
Josh or Kristen, I mean, I think you know the answer, but for the record, can you explain why we didn't go get bids?
Josh might be able to speak to this a little bit better. I know the relationship was there when I came on board, so I'm not sure of that.
Good question. I think the best answer I can provide is that we've worked with LoSci since we moved in this building. They know the building well, so they were uniquely qualified to do this work.
Okay, I think that should be clear on the face of the minutes if possible.
Yep, we can make sure that's detailed out, Marianne. So that's where we are, and the request is up to the 150,000. If there's a preference to not go that high at this time, and we want to use a different threshold, that's fine. We just need to know what the board's comfortable with at this moment.
What's the 150? Is it your expectation for the full project, or is it just a random number?
It was a number, Josh, when we did kind of the preliminary budget, and I'm not sure where exactly that number came from, but I know it was 150.
Yeah, it was the best estimate as of that time when we signed on with them.
For the whole project, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think I made it clear, but just to make sure I am making it clear, it's up to 150, so it's not a guarantee. Like, so
All right, understood.
Yeah, if their billing came in under, would be good.
And Josh, just because I have to ask it, when we last checked, which was years ago, when we first hired them, I assume their rates were reasonably competitive and they haven't shot them through the roof since then. And we don't have a sense that, that there would be a better fit elsewhere, I assume.
No, good question. And I think that we feel that way at this time.
Okay.
And I think what's been, just to add to that, what has been useful as a check on that is now more recently working with an owner's rep and working with MJM and David Dweck to ensure that what we're seeking and paying for is reasonable and at market.
Okay, it's helpful. Thank you.
Josh,
Yeah, it's been good. I think things have tightened up a lot in that regard. David is he's a penny pincher, which is good for us.
Josh, do those numbers include just what's going to LoSci, or does it include what's going to the consultant/engineers? I don't know if we're billing through them and they're kind of subbing that out or how that works.
Kristen can confirm, but that's LoSci only.
It's LoSci, yeah.
Okay. Because just to be clear, with those engineers and consultants, we have been bidding all of that out, and we've sought pretty competitive rates and the right fits for all of those, but that's separate.
Correct. Sal, to your point, yeah, we have individual contracts with them and the billing is coming through.
Got it.
Yep.
Sometimes the architects will sub that out. That's fine.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, all in favor? Thank you very much.
And the FOMB meeting is happening on either Thursday or Friday of this week, just so you know. All right, and I think with that, we move into our next meeting, which is going to be May 21st. As of now, that meeting was originally scheduled to be in person and start at 6 p.m. From my seat or the school seat, we're happy to do that. And at the same time, as I think about just how busy things are going to be in May and June, typically when we meet in person, it's a shortened meeting of an hour. So I guess I'd put out there, if no one is opposed, I'd propose that we continue to have a meeting in May, at 7 p.m. and do it via Zoom as we have been. And then we rethink perhaps our schedule in June and or September. And maybe think about meeting in September in person. So essentially, this just gives us 2 hours together as opposed to 1 hour of kind of business. We'd forego some of the fun afterward, but I'm just thinking there's a lot to do in May and June, and so it may be worthwhile to just remain disciplined here.
I think that makes some sense.
Fine with me. Yep.
Tim, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm just on my calendar. I'm out in June,
Mhm.
for what it's worth.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right, so I'll make the change. Chris, if you'd note the change and put it in the calendar, that'd be terrific. And beyond that, I think we can then move into executive session tonight.